the must-add players entering Week 2. Welcome, football fans and fantasy freaks. It's Mitch here with my must-add players. The players that hopefully can add to your stacked roster or salvage your fantasy team in Week 2. Some of you are probably already desperate. Trust me, I've been there, okay? I'm going to help you add the best possible options to your bench and maybe even your starting lineup for Week 2 and beyond. These are the players you should spend your fab on, that you should put a claim on. These are the players that you have to add before Week 2. If that sounds good, Gronk, spike the like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more fantasy football and NFL betting content here on the new Money Mitch channel. If you have a fantasy football question, of course, you can leave it in the comment section below. A waiver claim question, who should I pick up? Who should I drop? Should I drop this guy? Should I pick this guy up? Just let me know in the comments. I'll give you my thoughts. Okay, let's kick it off. And we're going in order of preference, especially at the top of this list, okay? We have plenty of options at every position: running backs, receivers, tight ends, quarterbacks. We're going in order of my preference, who I would pick up first. And then we're going into a territory of like high upside options, floor options, defenses, everything in between. So let's kick it off with the player, if he is out there, available on waivers. Not all of these players are going to be available in your league. It depends on the size and the format. But the number one player to me is Dylan Sampson, the running back of the Cleveland Browns. When I evaluated Dylan Sampson, I saw a small running back. Shifty, elusive, good vision. But what I didn't expect from Dylan Sampson so soon in the NFL was receiving upside. He had 17 PPR points in Week 1, mostly because he caught 8 passes for 64 yards. Now, a lot of this comes down to Joe Flacco's play preference. Joe Flacco likes to swing the ball out. He gets the ball out very fast. He's old. He can't move. He can't extend a play. So if he doesn't see his first read, he's likely to get the ball to the running back. Sampson can be very good in that regard for especially PPR teams, because Sampson might be the next PPR scam running back in the NFL. On top of that, though, Cleveland has a very poor backfield. Judkins has yet to sign an NFL contract, first of all. Second, he hasn't even practiced with the team. Third, he doesn't have a good reputation. And fourth, Jerome Ford wasn't really relevant in Week 1. Extremely interesting to see the usage out of the Cleveland running backs. But Sampson, when you get 20 touches in a game as a rookie in Week 1, you have my immediate attention. I know that his rushing attempts only went for 29 yards. And I know that it was against the Bengals, but I did warn you in my starts and sits. I said Ford is a sit. And the reason I said the Browns running backs, sit them, first of all, the confusion of the situation, but Cincinnati's run defense is going to be very much improved this year, in my opinion. They're going to have a good challenge against Jacksonville, but TJ Slayton, BJ Hill, they added Shamar Stewart. They've got some better, bigger bodies up front this year. So Sampson catching the ball a lot is a great bonus and great upside, and I do think his yards per carry will rise for the rest of the season. 20 touches, sign me up. I think there's upside. He's a rookie. They're going to be playing from behind. So if he is the pass catching back, he's going to catch the ball, screens, all that sort of stuff. He's an immediate startable player because of the volume that he received. Easy pickup. Next, you have Hollywood Brown, a player that might be more floor than upside, but you could feel safe immediately picking up Marquise Hollywood Brown and starting him in your lineup, which is why I have him as the top receiver target. He saw more targets and caught more passes than any other player in Week 1. 10 catches, 16 targets. Now, yeah, he had 19 PPR points. The yards per catch was rather low. I'm not even sure if he reached 100 yards. I think he might have had around 90, right? It was very low. But he was 8th at the position for PPR points. He is the clear Chiefs' number 1 receiver for the next 6 weeks. He's better than Travis Kelce right now. He's better than Juju. He's better than Tyquan Thornton. He's the number 1 receiver for Patrick Mahomes. And he does have 1,000 yards on his resume in a season. So he's the most trusted. He's the most experienced. He's the best option the Chiefs have. Even if he's inefficient, he's the guy to pick up. He's the guy to own. He's probably owned in a majority of your leagues, but there are leagues where he is available, okay? Next, we have Keenan Allen. Another one of those guys that probably is owned in your league if you're in a competitive league or a deeper league, but he could be available, especially if you drafted a little earlier in the offseason. He earned the most targets among all Charger receivers, despite playing the 3rd most snaps, right? Ladd McConkey, the number 1, Quentin Johnston, the outside receiver, who we'll talk about. Keenan Allen, though, man, he's just a zone feaster. He's a zone beater, right? He's the guy that finds the soft spots. Just no matter how fast or quick he is, he still gets it done. His route running is exquisite. His IQ, nobody has a better, higher IQ at wide receiver than Keenan Allen. And he always seems to roll forward past that first down marker. Keenan Allen has a great rapport with Justin Herbert. It does actually appear that Herbert and the Chargers are going to throw more than we thought. So Keenan Allen, very safe floor, and does provide a week-to-week startable wide receiver 3 option, especially in PPR leagues, because he's going to see volume, he'll occasionally score a touchdown, and he just feels like a very safe, reliable start each and every week, no matter the matchup. He's got a very good quarterback, he's on a very good team, and he looked good. He's kind of ageless. Next, Kayshon Boutte. Now, very excited for this one. I am a Patriots fan, so take it with a grain of salt. But Kayshon Boutte has had 100 yards in, 2 of his last 3 games? 3 of his last 4 games? Don't quote me on that, but pretty close to that. I can more correctly tell you this. Kayshon Boutte was Drake May's top target since last year. He had over 1,100 air yards with Drake May, which was nearly double the next highest Patriot. And in week 1, he led every receiving statistic for New England. Targets, 8. Fantasy points, 16. He's a good player. I was underselling him because I wasn't sure that the role within Josh McDaniels' offense is exactly a great role. Typically, the outside perimeter receiver in a New England offense or a Josh McDaniels attack isn't super reliable or consistent. But the thing is, Drake May likes to throw the ball outside the numbers, and he likes to throw the ball down the field. So Kayshon Boutte is the guy in this offense that can do both of those things. He's also a pretty decent player. He ended up becoming a 7th round pick, but at one point, he was projected to be a 1st rounder. He went to LSU. He's an LSU receiver. He always had talent after the catch, right? He can get by a defender down the field. He's got a good frame and good size. And he clearly looked like the most talented Patriot receiver with the most rapport with Drake May. He was making really good back shoulder catches, contested catches. He's got that thick upper body, and it allows him to prevent corners from reaching around him and making plays on the football. Strong hands. So if you want a receiver that I feel maybe could be a boom for the rest of the year, like a guy that maybe has a chance to go for 1,000 yards, surprisingly, that's on the waiver wire, that could be the number 1 receiver on a team, it might be Kayshon Boutte. I know that I sound very drastic and dramatic, but look, the Patriots are going to be a lot better on offense than they were in week 1. The rain heavily affected them, and still, Drake May still threw for nearly 270-ish yards, and he threw the ball 46 times because they trust him to throw the ball. I believe that one of these guys is going to hit. Diggs, Douglas, Booty. And it looks like Booty right now. He's in that perfect range of third-year receiver to break out. And we even heard in training camp that he was breaking out. So really intriguing option if you want to take a swing at wide receiver. Harold Fannin is maybe everyone's favorite waiver wire target this week, which is why maybe I don't have him first or second. And he's also a tight end. And you start less tight ends. And you typically don't want to start a tight end on the flex position. But look, in college, he led the NCAA. He led college football in receiving last year. Like, legitimately a top college football athlete, college football statistical driver. Like, this guy put up production. I know that the competition and all that wasn't exactly ideal and all that stuff, but he showed it at the NFL level in game one that he's quick, he's elusive, he's hard to tackle. He is like David Njoku. He looks a lot like David Njoku. Am I wrong? A younger version, right? And it looks like Cleveland's going to be playing a lot of two tight end formations, especially with Joe Flacco, because they need to be able to protect him. And they're willing to let Flacco sling the rock. And like I said with Sampson, they're going to be playing from behind a lot, this team. He caught 7 of 9 targets for 63 yards, and he can make something happen with those targets when he gets the ball in his hands. They're going to find a plethora of ways to feature him in the offense, screens, hand him the football. He's going to do a bunch of different stuff because he is dangerous. So I think he's worth it. I think you could start him as a flex, even if you have a strong tight end. I think if you have a weaker tight end and you didn't address it that well in the draft, you can pick up Fanning here, and I feel like he could be your guy. He could be. It does feel like Isaiah Likely from last year, but this might feel a little bit more reliable because there's less emphasis on the run in Cleveland than there is in Baltimore, and there's less targets to feed. So with Cleveland's wide receiver depth chart only really featuring Jerry Jeudy and Cedric Tillman, Njoku and Fannin are going to be able to share some pieces of the pie. So I think he's a very good target at tight end if you don't have a good one. Or you have an injured one like George Kittle. Trey Benson is a high upside running back option. He handled 40% of the running back carries for the team. He had 8 rushing attempts to Connor's 12. Connor is still the lead guy. He also had 4 catches, I think, Connor, and a touchdown. But Benson looked explosive. He had over 8 yards per carry. He had a 52-yard carry on the game. And Benson, when he touches the ball, he can make something happen. He's a very good change of pace to James Conner. And if anything were to happen to Connor, it does look like he would be their lead back by a mile. So if he is available, not only has he shown in week 1 that he's going to get like a good amount of touches, right? 8 rushing attempts isn't nothing, right? But he could also have some contingency upside as well. So somebody that you can stash on your bench, you're not probably starting, but somebody that has a lot of appeal if Connor, who has missed time in the past, does go down. Alec Manor, who I'm just figuring out how to say his name, rookie of the Tennessee Titans. Now, this one's interesting. This might be an example of a guy that gets dropped after week 1 that you should pick up. And the reason I say that is his statistics, his box score, when the owners of fantasy leagues who didn't watch the Tennessee Titans, because who does, right? Other than me, I just watched the game. Who actually watches the Tennessee Titans? And after watching Bo Nix in that game, they probably don't want to watch Bo Nix either. But this is an example of a guy that had underlying metrics that are strong. 28% target share. That ranks 16th among all receivers. And he had 133 air yards, which ranked 5th. He showcased his talent in training camp, joint practices, and preseason. Cam Ward really likes him, and he is one of their starting receivers. He is probably their second most talented receiver outside of Calvin Ridley. Cam Ward looked pretty good against the Broncos despite playing the Broncos in Denver, maybe the best defense in football. So this could be a guy that really does go off, like especially at the end of the season when Cam Ward is rising. So Definitely a great stash for your team. You're probably not starting him next week, but he has boom potential as soon as next week. Okay. Next, Quentin Johnston. Talk about boomer bust. We got QJ here. 5 receptions, 7 targets, 79 yards, 2 touchdowns. Feasted on the secondary cornerbacks of the Kansas City Chiefs on those crossers and in breakers. He's got good speed. He's got good height. He was a first-round pick for a reason. Yes, his hands are like cardboard or like a bunch of bricks, but I do feel like he'll put up some really productive weeks. And given that he played a ton for the Chargers in week 1, he is their primary outside receiver. He's their X downfield target. Herbert's going to make those throws. He's going to go down the field. We saw that against the Chiefs, especially with now this centered and kind of under center play action attack that they have going. I feel like that makes Johnson a lot more interesting as a target. So he's probably somebody that you don't really want to be playing unless you're in like a 3 receiver flex league where you might start 4 receivers. In that case, he gives your roster and your fantasy lineup a bit of upside, but he'll also have bust weeks. Like, there's no doubt about it. But I do feel like he has the boom potential, especially given how much the Chargers are willing to throw the ball downfield this year. Next, we have Bashal Tutin, running back of the Jacksonville Jags. Tutin is now really relevant. Before, he was like a swing and a dart throw, but now he is basically a handcuff to Travis Etienne with his own appeal as well, his own upside as well, because he is going to be the second running back to Etienne for Jacksonville. No more Tank Bigsby. He was traded to Philadelphia. That makes Tutin interesting because if Etienne goes down, bam, he's in the lineup. He's a dog. He's getting the most touches. He was handpicked by Liam Cohen, right? And also, he's very explosive. So he has a lot of appeal in terms of his style of play, in terms of this scheme. And he's a great change of pace running back. So I do feel like he has appeal in multiple ways. So I want to see how his role expands in week 2, but very promising guy if he is available. Next, a couple tight ends I want to discuss. Hunter Henry being the first. Henry's very, very, very reliable each and every year, coming off the waiver wire for your tight end position. If you miss on your tight end and you didn't pick the best one, right? Maybe you picked like Colston Loveland, for example, and he did next to nothing, didn't get enough snaps as a week 1 participant as a rookie. Hunter Henry could keep you going until maybe Loveland breaks out. He had 4 catches for 66 yards on 8 targets from Drake May. He is clearly their number 1 tight end beyond Austin Hooper. McDaniels has always featured tight ends heavily, and he is going to stretch the seam. He's going to get vertical. He's going to be a red zone playmaker. Him and May have very good chemistry, and May trusts him on 3rd down regularly. Henry looked good against the Raiders. He regularly was boxing out defenders, making plays down the field. He's a guy that you could start as soon as next week and feel pretty reliable, especially in PPR leagues, that he's going to get a good amount of targets each and every week, which is something you can't say about every tight end. Next, we have Juwan Johnson. Speaking of targets, 11 targets the Saints' lead tight end had in week 1, which led all tight ends, and he finished with 8 catches for 76 yards. He ran 47 of 47 possible routes. Juwan Johnson has always been an underrated athlete, route runner, and overall tight end. He's a good athlete. He makes plenty of nice catches. He's got a good body control. I feel like Juwan Johnson has always been underrated, but I don't love having Saints on my fantasy team. I'm not sure how reliable the statistical production is, but you could certainly do worse than a guy that saw 11 targets. Okay? You could certainly do worse. So if you're looking for a tight end option, especially in PPR formats, that gives you that floor, I think Juwan Johnson is a great option, especially with Chris Olave being a liability to get hurt at any moment throughout a game, especially with all the hospital balls Spencer Rattler's throwing him. I feel like Juwan Johnson is definitely a solid PPR option. Brenton Strange of Jacksonville had a good stretch early in the game, finished with 4 for 4 for 59. First drive, he went off. I want to say he had 3 of his 4 catches on the first drive when everything was scripted. He's a good chain mover, a good possession tight end. He probably wouldn't be my favorite target at this position. I definitely prefer Henry and Johnson for sure. but I do feel like he's a solid, sneaky kind of riser as a player. And it wouldn't shock me whatsoever if he ended up third on this team in receptions, third on this team in receiving yards, scored some touchdowns. Brenton Strange in a good Jacksonville offense could be plenty relevant in fantasy, so I wanted to include him here. Next, we have Cedric Tillman of the Cleveland Browns at wide receiver. Okay, he scored the lone receiving touchdown for Cleveland, 5 catches on 8 targets for 52 yards and the touchdown. Tillman is a good, bigger-bodied outside perimeter wide receiver. And Joe Flacco, like I said, he's going to rip the ball. He's going to go downfield. Tillman is the guy that does that in this offense, and he is the big-bodied, contested catch type of receiver in the red zone as well. So, yeah, kind of like a Quentin Johnston type role. He's not always going to see a lot of volume, but he could provide some boom or bust. He could also provide, in the right game script, a really big game. We saw it with Jameis Winston last year with this guy, Tillman, where he is definitely capable of catching 5 to 10 to 12 catches because he's got a good combination of route running, savvy, body control, and then also just the ability to separate at the top of the route, even though he's not exactly like the quickest guy. So Cedric Tillman of the Browns. Next, Juju Smith-Schuster. Again, somebody has to catch the ball from Patrick Mahomes. Juju will likely play a lot in the snap, a lot of snaps, but a lot in the slot and a lot of snaps in the slot for Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. He's also very effective on RPOs, which I would expect the Chiefs to ramp up because they don't have really great receivers right now. So going to drop back pass would be probably a liability for the offense. So a lot of RPOs, probably running the ball a bit more, some screens, things like that. Juju is still very efficient at fighting and winning against zone coverage. He's still got really good ability to kind of turn a catch into a few extra yards because he's a big-bodied dude. So he's kind of like a tight end at this point. He works the middle of that field underneath. He could be a chain mover. If they want Hollywood, to play a little bit more outside, or they're going to move Hollywood around, Juju certainly is the guy that could work the middle underneath of the field. So Juju, not my favorite addition because he's not extremely explosive. At this point, he's not a great player, but I definitely feel like he's worth adding to the roster as Rashee Rice and Worthy are both injured. Next, Tyler Algier, probably taken in your league or picked up at this point. But I found it interesting that as one of the top handcuff options, first of all, he's not even owned in like 50% of leagues. But second of all, he had 10 carries for Atlanta, which is really interesting because Bijan should not get less than 20 in a game. Like, I wonder if Atlanta was sort of ramping up Bijan because, he didn't play a lot in the preseason, obviously. He's a lead running back. So maybe they didn't want to give him like a huge workload in his first game of the NFL season, and maybe they gave Algier more work than expected. But at the same time, what if this is a closer to, a split than we saw late last year? Like maybe Algier is still working into the lineup or running the ball more than we expect, at least early in the season, but he's a great handcuff option. I mean, this guy has shown that as a backup, he's one of the few backups in football that can take a ton of volume if asked on the ground. So he's a guy that you kind of have to own in your league because he has a lot more value than some random wide receiver 3 or tight end 2. Like, he has the value of having running back 1 weeks if Bijan Robinson does go down with injury. Next, the lone quarterback I would pick up is Geno Smith. I understand he plays the Chargers. That could actually lead to some points in the Vegas Dome this week. I will say that. But I'd also say that Geno was the highest neutral pass rate quarterback in the NFL this week. The Raiders threw the ball on a neutral down, right? And a neutral situation more than any team in the NFL against New England. He was 24 for 34, 70% completion, which he regularly is 70%. That's pretty impressive for his first game on a new team with a new receiving core. I will say that. He did have 362 yards. The thing I love about Geno, he's very aggressive. He's willing to throw the ball downfield. And as I mentioned with New England, it was raining. It wasn't exactly the right environment to throw the ball. And Geno still threw it 34 times while leading a majority of the game, or at least the second half. So that's a really good sign for fantasy for pass catchers of the Raiders, but especially Geno Smith, who could end up being one of these pocket passers that has like 4,500 yards this year. So he had a touchdown, not 2, only 1. He did throw a pick, but Geno is a good football player, very underrated. The receiving core for the Raiders looked pretty good between Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers, Dante Thornton, and Trey Tucker, who scored a touchdown. They all look decent, so I feel like Geno, he's maybe a little underrated, so go pick him up if you need a guy. You might not be starting him against the Chargers. It's not the perfect matchup. You could. I certainly think you could. But these type of statistics, that type of neutral pass rate is something you want in fantasy football. And we're going to finish off with two defenses. First is Dallas. Okay, so Dallas plays the Giants. I think that's simple enough. Right now, they currently don't have Andrew Thomas. Will they have Andrew Thomas? I don't think so. We'll see in week 2. But the Giants' offensive line looked dreadful. They couldn't even block the Commanders. Not a good sign. Dallas's defensive front looked deep, and it looked vicious, and it still looked productive without Parsons. And that secondary is pretty good. And we know that Diggs and Bland can take the football away. So I like Dallas's defense against Russell Wilson. And then also, we've got the Indianapolis Colts, just generally looked like a good defense against Miami. They completely shut them down. They had interceptions. They had sacks. I love the creativity shown by Lou Anarumo. I thought their defensive front looked great between Latu, Buckner. I feel like they looked really good up front, and they were wrecking the game against Tua. And, a guy like Bynum adds some interception appeal. Kenny Moore is a playmaker. Franklin's a playmaker. So the Colts have some fantasy appeal because they've got some speed. They've got some really high IQ guys in the back end that can make some interceptions, create some turnovers, and their defensive line can create havoc. They're not a perfect defense from an actual NFL standpoint, but they're a very solid fantasy defense as long as they keep playing this way. So those are my pickups entering week 2. Let me know yours in the comment section below, and let me know if you have any questions. It's Mitch. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Don't forget to subscribe. Gronk spike the like button. Peace.